What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, Apple has just announced a brand new iPhone. Now, it's not often that you see Apple, drop a brand new type of iPhone, especially around this time of year, that happens to be a time frame that is not September. It seems like everyone got pretty excited about a new iPhone dropping, like they always do. The iPhone is simply just the most popular product Apple makes, so when a new iPhone is dropped, people are bound to get very excited for it. So Apple has just announced a new iPhone in their lineup, the iPhone 16e. Not called the iPhone SE, rather the iPhone 16e, so yes, those rumors about it being called that ended up being real. I think it's really just for, naming convenience sake, to denote that it's one of the lower end of the current generation lineup, rather than just being a cheaper iPhone altogether. Google already does this with their Pixel lineup, so, let's say you have, let's use the Pixel 9 as an example. So you got the regular Pixel 9, and then on top of that, you have the Pixel 9 Pro, the higher end, and then on the lower end, the Pixel 9a, letter A right next to the number, denoting that it's the lower tier, more affordable of that generation of Pixel phones. Samsung does it too. You have the Galaxy S24, the regular S24, the S24 Ultra, which is the higher end, and then you have the Galaxy S24 FE, Fan Edition, the lower end of the S24 family. Apple appears to be doing the same thing with the 16, adding the E right at the end, denoting it as the lower end, although, judging by its price, it's anything but cheap, and I would not consider it a budget phone. Most flagships have this price point. But looking at, the price, some of the specs, and even just looking at some of the features that it lacks, a lot of which are pretty much standard on most iPhones nowadays. Even though the specs do look good on paper, it has the latest A18 chip, the same one that is used on the entirety of the 16 lineup. It has a 48 megapixel camera, which is already a great camera by itself, even though it's just one lens. It's finally got FaceID, an OLED display, all the stuff that was lacking on the previous iPhone SE that already exists on previous higher-end iPhones finally made its way onto the lower-end iPhone through the 16e. So the specs look good on paper. The design actually looks good. It's actually one of the better-looking iPhones out there. However, it is lacking a lot of things that you would expect to see on it, but are not. And with the price tag that it has, $600, foreshadowing, in my opinion, this is one of the strangest, most unusual, and most mind-boggling iPhone that I've seen Apple release. With the tagline of latest iPhone, greatest price, it might be the latest in terms of camera and chipset, and also including Apple Intelligence, while also being significantly reduced on all aspects, and not necessarily being a great price for what it lacks and has. So today I'm going to be here giving my own thoughts and first impressions on the iPhone 16e, the latest iPhone with the greatest price. So let's start off with the design of the iPhone 16e. Now, on first glance, I actually like it. Yes, I know it may have one camera and only comes in two colors, black and white. Unfortunately, red is dead. No more product red iPhones. So sad to see that partnership, along with that color, is pretty much done for good, which is a bummer because that shade of red is one of my favorite colors of any Apple product. So there are only two color options with the iPhone 16e. Outside of that, I do like how this phone looks. It's got an action button, so you got that extra programmable button replacing the mute switch. It doesn't have camera controls like the rest of the 16 lineup. It does have USB-C for charging, so now every Apple product uses the same plug. Thank God, no more Lightning. Once again, thank you to Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, and the other 23 countries in Europe for this change. So pretty much universal with the 16 lineup. Action button, USB-C, the same glass and aluminum build, allowing for wireless charging, although it's lacking something that the rest of the 16 lineup have, along with other iPhones since 2020, which we will get into later. So it does have a good design. It also has a pretty decent display, you know. Finally, all iPhones now have OLED displays, you know, with the discontinuation of the iPhone SE, which was the last iPhone to come with an LCD screen. OLED is pretty much now standard on all iPhones, along with Face ID, so no more Touch ID because it doesn't have a home button anymore. I think Apple is a little bit too stubborn to include a fingerprint scanner inside the screen, like most Android phones do nowadays. But, you know, the reason why Face ID is continuing to be there is because it's a lot more convenient than just, you know, pressing the thumb on your screen. Not to mention, you literally leave your fingerprints everywhere, and they can easily be duplicated. So now, Face ID is pretty much standard on all iPhones. It's got a 6.1-inch OLED display. It's got a notch, so no dynamic island, although that was to be expected for a lower-end, more affordable iPhone. But that's pretty much what we got outside, so nice-looking design, nice screen for what it is. Finally getting OLED, finally getting Face ID. There's only one camera on the back, so no dual camera. But again, you know, this is a 48 megapixel camera, so expect this to be a very capable camera. Apple says that this is a 2-on-1 camera, so it can do 2x optical zoom without the need of a second camera. And, you know, looking at some of the pictures that they use, it actually does take good pictures already. And this is just coming from one 48 megapixel camera. This is not a dual camera setup that is being used. A lot of this is just raw, straight from the camera. So that just goes to show you how good the camera is. The 48 megapixel on the 16 alone, just the one camera, is already good enough. So the 16E, as we can see right here, has a pretty decent camera. And again, this is just using one lens of the camera. So we pretty much got all of the externals of the iPhone 16e. Inside is where we see the biggest change. So, you know, you got the same A18 chip that is found on the iPhone 16 lineup, 8 gigs of RAM, although that was to be expected, knowing that this device does have Apple Intelligence, and that already is both CPU heavy and RAM heavy, so no surprises there. But also, this is the first ever iPhone that uses an Apple-designed in-house modem. And again, this was something that we pretty much expected based on the rumors that we saw. And this new modem, this new chip that is in the iPhone 16e is the brand new Apple C1 chip. The very first ever Apple-built cellular modem. So yes, they're officially branding their own modems as the C line of chips. And they're saying, according to them, that because of this new modem, because of how efficient it is compared to like Qualcomm and Intel, this phone has the best battery life out of any 6.1-inch iPhone, which, yes, in fact means that the cheaper 16e has better battery life than the iPhone 15, the iPhone 16, and any previous generation iPhone with a 6.1-inch OLED display. And it even has better battery life than the iPhone 15 Pro, even. And also, keep in mind, this is the exact same modem chip that is expected, or rather, rumored to be found on the upcoming iPhone 17 Air coming later this fall. So knowing just by how good the battery life is, because of the C1 chip, how efficient it is compared to other modems made by Qualcomm and Intel, maybe even add Huawei into the mix, the 17 Air might have much better battery life than even the Pro models. Because let's be real, you're already very limited on what you can do with the battery with that thin of a device. I mean, we're talking less than 6 millimeters thin. So I would assume it's gotta be very difficult to actually put a good battery in there without sacrificing how thin it is. So this certainly answers the question on how this will be achieved. And it will be very interesting to see a thin and light 17 Air beat out other devices in the 17 lineup, including maybe even the Pros, which already have ridiculous battery life. As expected for being the pro level devices, battery life has to be good. Now, the chip is at its infancy. I mean, it doesn't have like the 5G ultra wideband that modems like Qualcomm already have. But again, you know, we'll see how it performs, at least in real-time use, compared to the other devices in the iPhone lineup, which have Qualcomm modems in them. Now, if the iPhone 16e has all of these nice little goodies, you know, the 48 megapixel camera, the A18 chip, Face ID, OLED display, Apple Intelligence, what's the catch? Well, the price, and the features it lacks. One of the key missing features, for instance, is MagSafe. This is the only iPhone, not just in the 16 lineup, but the only new iPhone that does not have this feature. There is no MagSafe, no Qi 2 wireless charging. This thing can only charge wirelessly with Qi 1 charging at 7.5 watts. That, in my opinion, is a deal breaker. Because, yes, I already charge my device wired most of the day, but sometimes, when I'm on a desk, I like to place my phone on a nice little, magnetic puck right on my desk, right where I need it, while it's charging. MagSafe has become such a almost standard on iPhones since 2020, since the iPhone 12 lineup. And it's already been proven popular. You got all these accessories, like these little wallet attachments, cases, dash mounts in your car. It's such a convenience to be able to just attach your phone by using magnets. And on top of that, charges the device at the same time. The fact that the iPhone 16e does not have this feature is preposterous, especially comparing to most, if not all, iPhones that have been released between 2020 and now. Almost all of them have MagSafe. Why the fuck doesn't this have it? So if you were to get the iPhone 16e, you will be missing out on being able to use MagSafe, being able to attach your phone on a magnet, charging it, having all these cool attachments like wallets and shit. That, in my opinion, is such a deal breaker. This is what makes the iPhone 16e a pretty peculiar device, at least in my opinion. It also doesn't have the latest Wi-Fi chip too. Most other iPhones at least have Wi-Fi 6E, or some even have Wi-Fi 7 already, like the 16 series already does. The 16E is the only one in this series that doesn't have Wi-Fi 7. I don't think it even has Wi-Fi 6. So, very strange. I mean, I get the whole cost-cutting thing. You're trying to make this the more affordable iPhone, the lower cost model. I don't want to use the word cheap because Apple really doesn't make cheap phones or cheap anything. Usually when Apple makes a cheaper device without being considered cheap, they actually can do pretty well at that. And that's exactly what I mentioned in my What to Expect video. So now we move on to how much this phone will cost. And this right here is one of my biggest gripes with the iPhone 16e, its price. Now, obviously, for a long time, we've heard rumors telling us to expect that maybe this upcoming iPhone SE 4, which is what we were calling it at the time, would get a noticeable price bump. Because, 6.1-inch OLED display, Face ID, 48 megapixel camera, an A18 chip, and 8 gigabytes of memory, all of this flagship shit on a more affordable iPhone was just kind of like a mind-blowing pipe dream when you really think about it. But, of course, Apple intelligence is very powerful and memory hungry, so a lot of us just expected, yeah, okay, maybe the price goes up to maybe $500, $530, maybe even $550 at maximum. I would obviously speculate that there has to be some caveat to keep it as low as possible. If it's going to be this affordable, maybe they'll ship it with, 64 gigabytes of storage. But, as it turns out, no. The default starting storage configuration for the 16e is 128 gigabytes. And despite having no MagSafe, no ultra-wideband chip, not the latest Wi-Fi, the iPhone 16e will start at $599, $600 at minimum, not including tax. Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, fucking shit, man, ain't that a slap in the face that it starts at $600? It doesn't even have MagSafe, it doesn't have the latest Wi-Fi chip, it's lacking all of these other things. How am I going to spend $600 on something like this? And what's more mind-boggling to me the most about this is that this is the cheapest iPhone in the lineup right now. They discontinued the iPhone SE alongside the 14 as well. So just only a couple years ago, the entry price of a new iPhone used to be $400. And now the cheapest entry-level iPhone has become a whopping $600. This is not a cheap phone, although it's supposed to be marketed as one. Now, granted, I do think that the 16e will be a fairly decent bang for your buck and a relatively reasonable option for a lot of people out there. In fact, even at that steeper price point, it's still a pretty complete package. Again, we're talking Face ID, Apple Intelligence, OLED display, 48 megapixel camera, and the new Apple designed C1 chip, like we talked about. Again, this is all pretty astonishing, and the fact that it's rocking USB-C makes it entirely future-proof along with the A18 chip. And to be fair, I think that this device will last a lot of like normie consumers who don't care about multiple cameras and ultra wide and telephoto lenses or macro photography and spatial video recording and all this other fucking bullshit, because obviously not everybody has an Apple Vision Pro, number one, and most people just want a good, reliable iPhone that's got a nice camera. Again, 48 megapixels on the back of this thing. Even though it's just got one lens, it can pretty much do everything that 3 cameras on a Pro model can do with just one camera. Now, does that mean I recommend this kind of device? Certainly not, especially right now. I do believe, in the long term, especially at this entry price of $600, I wouldn't recommend you buy it today. Knowing that this is supposed to be an entry-level phone, I have a hunch that this is going to be massively discounted and heavily subsidized to oblivion by a fucking shit ton of carriers out there. Months or perhaps even years from now, you're gonna see this phone get heavily discounted, and you're going to be able to get it for probably half the price. Hell, maybe even less than that within the next 6 to 12 months. So I wouldn't recommend you going out and upgrading your current older iPhone with this thing right a fucking way. In fact, if you really need to upgrade your iPhone right now, waiting is not an option for you, may I suggest checking out refurbished sites on the internet instead, like eBay or Amazon, the latter of which also has a 90-day money-back guarantee thingy, by the way, so even if you don't like it after that time period, you can still return it and get all your money back. You can find an iPhone 15, which will have a great display brightness, USB-C, a dynamic island, a dual camera setup, and even MagSafe charging for cheaper than an iPhone 16e. And it's still a pretty capable device, even to this day. I was able to find one for less than $500. And if you care about Apple Intelligence, for the same price of the iPhone 16e, you can get an iPhone 15 Pro and have 3 cameras, plus a 120Hz ProMotion display, and both of which have the same amount of storage as the entry-level 16e. So you really don't have to spend an extra $100 just to lose out on features like MagSafe and an extra camera. Yes, I know the 15 is lacking some of the new Apple-designed C1 modems and action buttons and whatnot, and it also doesn't get Apple Intelligence, but, through my experience, Apple Intelligence really hasn't been that great, and all the features that it comes with kind of suck and are pretty lackluster anyway. I haven't really been using it as much as I initially thought I would. It's that bad. Just goes to show you how far behind Apple really is when it comes to AI. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. So overall, if you're in the market for an iPhone right now, I don't think you should get the 16e. At least as of right now. I do think that in the long run, maybe about a couple months from now, the 16e will still be around and will more than likely end up getting significantly more affordable later down the line. And I think that it will end up aging particularly well. It's just that the device is too expensive for what it is, it lacks too many features, and it's still very limited, especially knowing with how Apple Intelligence is. But at least it still has the latest shit like an A18 chip, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 48 megapixel camera, plus the OLED display and Face ID. And that's pretty much what makes this device pretty strange, pretty weird, or at least abnormal as what I would consider. And a lot of people seem to consider it too. But either way, it's time for me to end the conversation right down to you. What do you guys think about the iPhone 16e? Do you think it's a good device? Do you think it's a bad device? Do you think that this is a good value already? Do you think that the lack of features like MagSafe is a deal breaker, or is it a nothing burger? Are you excited to see the capability of the new C1 chip? What would you have preferred to see on the iPhone 16e? Will you be getting one when it comes out? As always, at the end of every video, I love to pass the conversation right back down to you, so let me know what you guys think about the iPhone 16e in the comment section down below. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button down below. And if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the little notification bell. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias. Links are in the description below as always. Share this video around with your friends, families, boyfriends, girlfriends, enemies, whomever. Definitely helps me out a lot, helps the video grow, and helps grow the channel if you were to share this video with whomever you know. But either way, as always guys, like, subscribe, ring notifications, and until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, talk soon, you're awesome.